from the head up, holding the camera and everything is really dependent on this assembly that I'm putting together, partially anyway. So putting these together kind of in one and then a little bit in the other kind of fashion, same thing taking it off. Otherwise the screws will bind, but making sure these are on firmly is pretty important. So that now it's a kind of a safe place to begin.
And when you have a decent amount of weight, even if it doesn't feel like it at first, you will start to see it slide a little bit.
But you'll find that this is like, and these vary from head to head, but it's really stiff, but it's normal, because you want to be able to kind of have to pry it off a little bit.
You don't want it to just happen.
Yeah.
It needs to be deliberate.
Yeah.
Camera. So on the base of the camera is the bridge plate. The bridge plate is going to literally bridge between the bottom of the camera and your dovetail. So it gets put on by sliding it over this little button that gets depressed by the front of the bridge plate. And then, so, like on the bottom of the, or on the top of the tripod head itself, there is a little set screw down here that prevents the camera from accidentally sliding off the front. And then the button on the back prevents the camera from sliding off the back. In order to get it off, you'll depress that button with your finger and then start to slide over it. And then once you slide over it, the bridge plate will keep it pushed down and you'll be able to take it off. So the camera's not locked on here, it can still slide, which is why I'm never going to let my hand off of it. I always want to make sure that I have a hand on it just in case, even though we've checked that everything is locked on here and this button shouldn't, accidentally be pushed. I'm not being too careful. But, so on this side, there's the lock for the bridge plate, and that's just a lever that slides from back to front to lock it where it is. And then, camera's not moving anywhere. But I can unlock it, slide it forward, slide it backwards as needed with however the camera's being built up and whatever you need to do in order to balance it properly. Excuse me, on the back, we have a battery mount. So this camera does not take power directly in from the back of it. You need a cable plugging into the DC input on the back of the camera in order for power to actually get into the camera. So this V-mount lock on the back is really just holding it on there and not actually providing power. So that'll go in, and then this cable will go in here too.
It's also an AC power supply, so you wouldn't have to use the battery, onboard batteries.
If you don't want to. The batteries are all in here. Batteries all focus. But we have 4 Antabauer Dionic HCXs for the camera, and then 2 Antabauer Dionic HCs for the monitor. And this battery fully charged will get you probably a good like 2.5, almost 3 hours on the camera, depending on how much you're shooting and exactly what you're shooting.
But right now, there's been no counterbalance applied, and there's been no tension applied. So I'm going to hold on to this, and I'm going to release the brake, and you'll see that this thing just flops. If you had this big lens on here, it'd go forward, and you might just break something. So one of the first things you want to do is start applying some counterbalance. There's a little gauge here. It's a little analog number. And if I pull this thing out and crank it, what this is going to do is spring the head back into the center position. But it's dependent on when it's fully built and how much weight is on here as to how much you want to apply. So I'm going to apply a little bit just to get started, but it requires a little bit of manual labor here, but I'm just gonna apply a little bit. You see that it doesn't wanna really go all the way back right now. And then over here, you'll see pan fluid, or tilt fluid. So as I turn that number up, I feel a little more resistance, and as I get higher, the harder resistance there is. But the thing's still gonna wanna go where the weight wants it to go. And over here on this side is the pan fluid, so for panning it. So if I wanna add a little friction to that, so I get a smoother pan, however is necessary. And then there's always the brake to lock this thing in position. But the idea is when this thing is built, you don't really have the brake on, that the camera will not move wherever you put it, and no matter what weight is on it, as long as it's balanced correctly. So I always like to have a little bit of tension on it, but just be aware of that the brake needs to be on. Don't just walk up to a head and camera and release the brake, because you never know what the tension is. Be aware of what the tension and the counterbalance is, so that you don't lose the camera.
Yeah, and you'll notice that when you're applying the pan or tilt fluid to the heads, you can, it's not a click stop like on a lot of tripods, or it's not, you know, set between one and another. You can turn it, you know, a quarter of a turn and give it a quarter of a turn more fluid. So that's one of the advantages of having a head like this, that you can dial in, you know, literally between 1 and 100% of the counterbalance, and then give it, excuse me, exactly how much fluid you want in order to suit your personal preference or the needs of balancing the camera. So
Maybe build up the camera,
yeah.
and then put the lens on.
So let's get the. So this camera has two. It has two ways of viewing the image.
LCD.
One's more like a traditional EVF viewfinder, and then the LCD is probably the most common.
Well, the LCD is also a touch screen, so it allows us to get in and manipulate the camera's menu structure. You can also manipulate the camera's menu with this remote remote, which you can use off the camera. It's remote, or you can put it on the camera where this back plate is, and this will actually allow it to charge. So you got to make a decision if you're going to put this on and use it, or if you're going to put the battery plate on and use it. There are ways to put both on, but it's a very modular system, so you almost always don't see like two systems exactly alike. For now, we'll keep it on.
So we'll screw it into the arm.
So that'll do the same thing as the screen.
Excuse me.
What's that?
That'll do the same thing as the screen.
Yeah, it'll allow us to get into the menus and change the parameters.
So I'm not fully locked on with this. I'll need a wrench and then tighten it down a little bit more. But for our purposes right now, that's okay. And the small side of the Noga arm goes in camera. The adjustable side will generally go into the EVF. So mounting it is as simple as open up the 1/4 holes and I have two on. I was over two. So we'll spin it on until it's on there, and then just a sec.
We're primarily going to be using this setup on a Fisher Dolly, so everything would be the same except instead of the tripod legs, we just take the head and mount it on the dolly.
Right.
And the nice thing about the dolly is now you have an easy way to move the camera all over the room. It takes up some space, but if you have the room, it's much easier than picking up tripod legs.
The viewfinder cable has LEMO connections, so they pull in and kind of are springed, or I guess these ones aren't.
Yeah, they are a little bit.
Oh yeah, they are.
It's hard to notice.
Just
But
a-
to release
just a
it from
tiny bit.
where it's inserted, you pull the outer shell just a little bit.
It's a pretty natural pull. It's not like you're.
Because then I put the format too.
Lens.
lens.
I'll do that. So this is a PL mount, positive lock, very standard mount. Cameras and lenses. Right is tight, lefty loosey, righty tighty. You can see the sensor in there. So make sure it can only go so far open and so far closed. You can see a little notch here, little stub that lines up at about 1 or 2 o'clock, if you will. So that's kind of a key point. So I'll leave that open for now. So before you put the lens on, though, you want to put support rods on, and they go into the bridge plate. These are 15 millimeter diameter support rods, or iris rods, they might be called. And these little locking levers to lock these in position, so they can't slide. These are here for, we call this lightweight configuration. So if you want to do like handheld configuration, you can take the bridge plate off. You can put lightweight rods here, and then still have your accessories on there. Obviously you want to have a large zoom lens, you might have a smaller prime lens or something. This is the low support. This is going to support the front of the lens. You'll see that it's off center. It's not in the center of the lens not in the center of where the rods are or this plate. It's off to the side a little bit. This is just by design. So I'm just going to put that on a little free right now because it's going to vary where the lens ends up. But this does lock by moving this lever, and it's locked on there. Also has the ability to move this around. I'm going to thread that into the bottom of the low support on the lens. So working typically as a camera assistant, I would work this way, coming towards the camera from this side. This zoom lens is a Cooke 18-100 zoom lens, but again, PL mount. And so I know I'll move over here so you can see. I'll just rotate that around the other way. And typically, and I do this I find this is the best way to put a lens on as compared to from any other position, because I can really see what's going on in this mount as much as possible. If I do it from the front, I really can't see it, and I can't really feel when it's flat, but it's important that it's on there flat. Again, you see there's 4 notches in here, so that's going to line up one of them to where that stub is right there.
So you have the ability to mount this lens in any way. You know, there are witness marks and there are, you know, your tick marks on the sides.
Right. If you look at it right there, you see the witness marks facing out.
So that's going to, you know, if you were building this camera such that you knew you were going to be on the ground, you know, the camera's going to be super low. It doesn't make sense to have your witness marks on the side. It makes sense to have them straight above. So you might rotate the entire lens so that you don't have to have your head all the way down, you know, on the ground looking next to the camera. You could just look over it and effectively see your marks and see, you know, that you're getting everything in the way that you want to.
I don't like to release my hand here until I actually have a low support fastened, because I don't want all the tension on here. But, you know, lock this, you don't have to over tighten it, but you'll feel that it's hand tightened. And then lining up this part is critical, but just to give me a kind of a weird issue right here. If I thread it in, they should meet up. It's kind of pulling it down a little bit. It really shouldn't, but it is, so I have to go with it and then lock that. And this is locked, so now everything's tight here all the way around.
So basically, it's a heavy lens, so you need support for it.
You need support.
Even though the mount's strong, you don't want to rely on it to bear
Yeah.
all of the weight.
It's not the strongest mount, honestly. It's a 4 screws holding this mount on, because this mount is, you can change this mount to different mounts, like Canon mounts and stuff. But at this point, I can tell that the camera's probably front heavy.
Go forward.
So, and we're gonna put a map box on, we're gonna put a monitor on, and that might come back a little, but I can tell I need to slide it back. And like Kevin showed you, one of the first simple things you can do is release that sliding lever and just move it back. If I do it while it's loose, or the brake is off, I can see where I might need it to go. And I know I'm adding more to the front, so I'll just kind of wait here, but lock this again so it doesn't slide away from me. And you can see when it's getting close to where it needs to be.
And so we went back nearly all the way on the dovetail. If we need to, we can also release the sliding plate on the head itself and move that back. You know, if you knew that, you know, if you knew if you were doing something.
And if the camera is balanced on this head, on the tripod head, it just makes it easier to operate. You're not fighting against it. So once it's all put together and balanced, then it's much easier to pan and tilt.
So next we'll put the follow focus on, which I think we're okay.
It would go like this. This is a really old follow focus. Maybe FF2, now they're up to FF5. But this slides on, as you can see, and a lot of the new ones clip on, so you kind of can easily get in there and snap it on. So with this one, I might have to take the lens off. Let me see.
We have to just,
I might have to raise it up just a little bit.
right, there you go.
Hold on. Here, hold that.
So,
And I'll have you slide it on. What I'll do is I'll just take this part and release it, and then I'll take the lens. Right. Camera's locked, so we're good. Put it kind of where you think it's going to need to go. About
Approximately.
there.
enough so that we've cleared the area in question.
The focus turn is geared, sort of, and that's what the follow focus does. When you turn it from the side, it catches the gears on the lens itself for focus.
So yes, we have a extension for the right side of the camera that will fit in. So that means you don't have to be on, if you're pulling focus as a first AC, you don't have to be on the left side of camera. You can be on the other side if you want, if you need to or if you prefer. But that'll fit on, and you can just push it in and then turn until the gears mesh inside here. Almost. So it should kind of click in. There you go. And then we'll lock it down.
So yeah, these lock so that the whole thing's not flopping around. And then you would put this into the gear here and match this up. And then lock this lever so that it doesn't move. Now I got follow focus.
That's a big job for an AC. Person who turns the focus while the camera operates.
Literally following the focus.
Right. And then you over here doing that. And if we set the whip or anything.
We have a speed crank.
Speed crank.
Yep. So in case you need to, if you need to go more than that and you can't reach your hand around, you can always do this and then follow it all the way around.
These discs are marking discs. Do not use a Sharpie. Use an erasable Sharpie.
Or like a
A whiteboard.
Dry
whiteboard.
erase.
Yeah, dry erase.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah,
Expo
expo marker.
And they're removable because if you wanted to change them out or something.
So basically, it's for follow focus, it's when you're going to and from the camera, you're probably gonna have to change your focus. So you practice that, you rehearse it, and you do your start mark and your finish mark, and the first AC will follow the focus and watch the marks, and hopefully it all just works.
So that's aided by the lens itself. So you see that we have our witness marks that correspond to footage. Oops. So when we are
Feet to the subject, right?
right. So when you take your measurements, you say my subject is going from 13 feet to 8 feet, and then you can find on the lens about 13 feet and then all the way down to 8 feet, and you can use those marks to help you.
And you put marks on the floor at 13 feet and 8 feet to help your actors hit their mark.
You take measurements with your measuring tape. Nowadays you can look at a monitor and say, I'm in focus, I'm in focus, I'm in focus. But, when you're not using a monitor, if you don't have a monitor available to you, you need to trust your measurements and trust your intuition and your ability to judge distance to say, I know that
trust your
person
eyes.
is 5 feet away, I'm going to 5 feet. And it
So,
can be
and that's
very
also
tough.
for rack focusing, right? So it's not only when your subject is moving towards and from the camera, if your subjects are still but at different planes, you can rack from one to the other at different distances. So that's, rack focus is when your subjects are still, follow focus is when your subject's moving.
Matte box?
There's so many pieces.
There are a lot of
Who would have thought, huh?
No, I
Pieces.
You pulled out the camera and it's just this tiny little thing and
There's
you're
6
like, what?
boxes.
Lots of variables.
So,
Next thing is the
Um,
matte box.
yeah, so the matte box, protecting against, protecting against flares, allowing you to use filters with the lens. So we didn't know what, excuse me, what resolution you're shooting. And if you're gonna be pretty wide, then we'll change the backs, but. So like the follow focus, this is sliding onto the rails, and not clipping in. We have a reflex ring that will go on the back of it.
This is fits this lens specifically.
So this is going to cover the gap between the edge of the lens and the edge of the matte box. That way light that's from behind camera or bouncing off of a filter won't get trapped within the matte box and cause glares and cause flare and everything like that. So this will just slide on here and be able to slide. If you are pulling it in and out of the matte box, you'll want to make sure that you pulled it by the black little, holder piece, so as to not accidentally pull this up and then have the filter fall out on you.
So I think, is that how we're gonna get the 3 neutral density filters? Is that the one, that what comes with the kit?
Yes,
Okay.
that was what was.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's
I don't
fine.
know whether that was ordered specifically.
It probably
or
was,
It was given
but-
to you.
I'm not expecting to use filters, actually. I think we're just gonna be shooting indoors most of the
Okay.
time, so.
Sure.
Hopefully we won't need
Matte box
them.
thing?
We can do that.
Yeah.
You want to do that now?
Sure. It's kind of weird.
Now, are those black lines on the screen? Is that from the thing in front of the
Yeah,
lens?
we're gonna.
It is.
That's
That's
the
yeah. That's why
front.
we
The
have
matte
this.
box. It's just it's one.
It's called vignetting.
But I know, it's on Instagram.
Oh, I see. It's a
It's on the-
effect, huh?
Yeah, and it has like a black border.
That's where she learned her camera.
That's where I learned the terminology.
Oh, I see.
Degree.
Yeah, I'm already, this is the 3rd card already, so we're gonna have to like.
My phone can't even take a
And
picture.
plus,
You see what
this
it's
camera
over.
didn't even have a card in it when I pulled it out of the camera, so there's a card missing.
That's not good.
If you
So I
want, I'll
swapped
toss it on my
like the
laptop.
other 2 cameras, and they were, no one format them, including me.
So on this LCD, it's touchscreen, and you'll see it, if I touch it once, the screen just goes clear. See time code, touch it, and I get see all the options here, as well as a menu option. Come back a lot.
It's like a little.
This is down.
Adjust it down.
No, it's gonna go up.
It's up all the way.
So I mean, it is 5K, so it might not even cover it.
Right.
But they're not gonna shoot 5K probably. So in here is where you have your options. Right now it's in 5K HD. If I touch that, I can slide this slider. The camera can do 6K. You'll see it get wider. It's probably gonna vignette because 18 millimeter. This lens was designed before 6K cameras, and it doesn't really cover it. It doesn't cover the format very well. But I can slide it to, say, if you're gonna do 4K HD, it's 4K, 4K 2:1, widescreen, 4K HD, it's 3K. 4K HD means it's a 1:7:8 aspect ratio, so that when you convert or transcode this later, it'll easily keep the same ratio without having to crop anything or having black lines on the top and bottom, So this is 4K HD, and the lens does cover that, so. So what you see inside of that white rectangle is what it's recording, as well as here. your frame speed. So if I go in the menu and there's settings here, project, I want to make sure my basic project system, this is up to you, it's set now at 23.976, which is pretty standard for broadcast acquisition at 24p, if you will. You can make it a true 24p if you were going to do like a film out. Most of the time it's there. You could do 2997 or 5994. Most of the time, I say most of the time, it's set at 2398. So that's the project frame rate. On top of that, there's frame rates that we can now acquire on top of that speed. So if I go slower, then it's going to play back high speed. If I go higher, then it's going to play back slow motion. So at this resolution, 4K HD, I can get 120.83 frames per second out of it, and that's right there. And you see how the exposure decreased because of that speed increase. But things look pretty normal until we record a playback. But I'll go back to 2398, so it's all straight ahead. If you see this number yellow, that means it's not matching the system project frame rate. So when it's back to the regular color, then it matches. So your ISO is variable, and you can see that change. But what you have to know with this camera is it shoots RAW, it only records RAW. And what does that mean? It means that anything we do on top of this is essentially metadata that's applied to the RAW material, including the ISO, the white balance value, any other looks that we might apply to the picture or the color, stuff like that. Certain things are always going to apply, like the frame rate and the shutter speed. They're going to be consistent.
So it's malleable in post. You know,
Right.
you're not married to a specific
Exactly.
white balance or ISO. You know, you can say, you can shoot something at 500 and then say that's a little dark. Let's bring it up to 800.
Right, real
And
easily.
It'll be the same. The quality of the actual image won't change because effectively it's just recording one white balance and one
Right.
ISO, and then applying gain and applying certain tints and looks
So
as needed.
here I'm increasing the white balance value. You see there's numbers on this scale here. 3200 is here. If you had tungsten light, you can see it's looking a little blue. I think the room's probably more like 4300 or something. So I put it there. But if you just want to warm it up, you certainly can. So it's like 4900. Or you can hold this button in, and it'll allow you to measure the value. If you had a gray card, it would be the right thing to do, or a white card with the right exposure on it, and then you'd be able to auto white balance. And if I hit that now, it's just going to sample what it sees in front there, and that's what it's giving us. But you can trim it, or you can just adjust it by eye, whatever works. So if I want to see what the RAW is really looking like as far as all these parameters, I have the ISO now set to 800. If I touch this there's a little histogram here. If I touch that, it brings up a little menu, and I can press RAW, and that's what RAW is, as far as exposure is looking like. As far as what its light value and temperature are really looking like, that's what it's always getting. So if I shut that off and I crank up the ISO to something stupid like 12,800, and I didn't adjust the exposure, let me adjust the exposure to make it look right.
So this is the f-stop ring that he's turning right now.
Right, this is now, I'm at like a T11 here. You can see there's a bunch of noise in there. I highly don't recommend using the camera at 12,000 ISO. But if I go to RAW, you'll see what the camera's really getting. It's that. So it's a lot darker because I close it down so many stops. So if I move this up and down, you'll see there's quite a bit of range here.
So you'll see that's exactly the same as when you had it at 800.
Well,
Or nearly exactly the same, besides,
Well, right now, at this value, it looks sort of dark because the value of the RAW sensors really hasn't changed like it does here. So if I go back
The
to...
goal, of course, is to get the image in the camera the way you want it.
Absolutely.
Not have to do as
Not
much
to
in
do too
post.
much.
Because we're not going to have time to do a lot in post. So we're going to try to get good exposure.
Well,
every
this
shot.
little guide here is also available on that screen, but this little histogram down here, you can see the RGB channels. You see as I close down, it goes towards the left, and that little red line goes up. As I go towards the right, it goes up. It's only going to go, it's actually not going to go any higher in this room right now. Well, it does in that case because I moved the ISO up to 2000. But this is an exposure guide. You kind of want to keep it between those two goalposts. If the line on the left is too high, that means you got a lot of noise in the shadows, and if the goalpost on the right is starting to go red, that means you got a lot of too much clipping in your highlights. So somewhere in the middle. You also kind of have to start trusting your eye with, like, if you have a properly calibrated monitor and you know that, then you start knowing where things lie better.
Or like you guys are probably gonna use the light meter, and then you'll be able to.
Set it to like an 800
Right.
ISO, which would be kind of a standard kind of thing.
But in a pinch, you know, if you were in a situation where you needed to just go and change something, you could look at this little histogram and then put it so that it's approximately between those two goalposts, and then,
This is way high.
oh yeah, I just turned it up because it was super dark, you know.
The default values are light up in green, and they're usually pretty good. I would usually go with those.
Definitely a ballpark.
But you can see there's a huge difference on looking at the picture on here and there compared to that. That has like very crushed blacks, the way it's set up. It's not really calibrated
At all.
at
And
all.
you never really know
Yeah.
if anything's calibrated. So
Yeah.
that's why you always
Right.
want to check your histogram, do your light meters, and at least you know you get some exposure.
Right.
There's a lot of contrast in that picture, and that's what the monitor is doing. But if you look here and there, you'll see that it's not so contrasty.
Right. I mean, you can, there's also a lot of exposure tools in here that, you know, if you guys want,
Yeah.
we can pull them up.
All right, so why don't we try to get some footage and then see how to get it off of the camera?
Here's the red media. It's this, you got two of these cards, they're 128 gigs. It only goes in one way. Comes out this way. So it's gonna slide right in here. See the arrows, the name out, that's the back, that's the front. Slide that in. There's nothing really locking it in there. What you don't wanna do is just yank it out. You wanna eject it, and there's a way to do that in the menu structure. But when it goes in, you'll see it says SSD on the bottom. That's the solid state drive. It says 100%. That's how much volume is available. As it records, that number's going to go down. But what you want to do is, if you touch it right there, you get a little menu to format the media. And you can reset your reel count to 1 for the beginning of your production, and then hit format. It'll say, are you sure? It's going to erase all your data. So, are you sure you backed it up? Yes, I did. And there, it's done. It's already formatted, so it's ready to go. And so over here you also see DC, how much voltage you got, and you're ready to go.
Here's the card reader too.
That's the card reader.
It has a power supply and then a USB 3 and FireWire.
Firewire 800,
So,
yep.
oh, 800. You know, if you don't have a FireWire, you probably have a USB somewhere. I
Yeah.
hope.
Yes.
It's backwards compatible, so USB 2 would work, but you'd be taking
A lot of
forever to
slow,
download it.
yeah.
Right.
To record, there's this button, the same one as power on, and there's also one in the front here, just in front of where the media is. Right over here, see that red dot? So, there you go. You guys want to shoot?
Yes, we do. All right, so should we do a meter reading? Who remembers how to read? We can do a meter reading.
Jack. I think Jack's the only one.
All right, so what's our ISO setting?
800.
800.
So,
It's really stiff.
yeah.
Yeah, you want these locked.
There you go.
Something should pull up. There you go. Just set that should look.
So we moved the mount a little bit further back from actually where this is. That way we're giving us a little more room, so we don't need to unlock everything, slide the rails a little bit up. We'll bring it in until it just barely fits over this, and it should be a pretty snug fit. Fit around the lens.
So there's a little adjustment for the height in a way. It's sort of a concentric adjustment. So just to make it fit better, I'll adjust that. Get that in place. I lock these little locks So this is also what they call a swing-away matte box. So you can change your lenses without taking your matte box off of your camera, without taking all your filters out and changing the whole scenario.
Oh, fancy.
Change all this junk, put this back. And if it's a shorter lens, well, I can just slide it back, I just didn't have to take it all apart.
Which is in part what this is here for, unlocking it. So what Dave was doing before was turning this, and that's kind of moving the matte box a little bit up and down, but it's also allowing for you to be able to spin this and to turn it. Since you're using one lens, you don't really need to do that much adjustment. But they're really great when if you have a prime lens set and all of the lenses are approximately, if not exactly the same distance. That way you put your matte box in one place and you just swing it away every time you need to change the lens, and you don't need to readjust it every time. Saving you a lot of valuable moments on set.
You have C-stand?
No.
You have maybe a light stand that will go into this? We could put the monitor on it?
I have a tripod for lights, I think.
About the 5/8 spud? Yeah, like they're kind of light stand probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we'll put that. So this is pretty much built. Still have a couple of parts for the matte box, like the eyebrow or shade. If you look at the top of the matte box, there's a couple of little threaded wheels here. A couple of notches that will line up with those screws that are exposed, and then tighten that down.
What is that for?
That's mostly when you're shooting outside to keep the sun from causing glare.
Glare and flare out of there, and it's adjustable. Sometimes there's sides as well, or hard mats. Hard mats in the back. I guess we don't have the sides. But, hard mats are doing the same thing. They have different focal length sizes on them. So you put that on the front of the matte box. Hard mats. I won't use it with this lens because it's a variable 18 to 100. But if you're just using a 50 to 65, in this case, the lens would clear just this hole. And that way you won't any of the scattered light wouldn't get in there and give you any kind of flares or anything like that.
If you had a light that, for whatever reason, needed to be relatively low and pointing at the camera, it might not be blocked by the eyebrow, and you might need a hard mat, to do that.
And you don't always see it in the monitor or through a viewfinder at the flares. You get your footage back and you're like, I didn't see that on set. And sometimes better safe than sorry.
It stays up on you.
So I'm going to balance this out. I got to move the bottom plate here. And if I loosen the head, I'll see it through. So somewhere around here seems pretty good. Lock this. The plate's locked. I'm going to add a little more. See how it still wants to go backwards or forwards? I'll add more counterbalance. I'm up to like 35%. The more I add, the more it's going to want to come back towards me. See, it stands still. That's the idea. So wherever I point the thing, it doesn't want to run away. And the tension's really about what works for the operator. What kind of move you're making, if it's fast, if it's quick, if it's just consistent and slow, whatever tension you might need.
If you know you need
You don't
to
want it
move
to bounce
quickly.
around. Yeah, if you need to move quickly, or if you just need a nice smooth action, put a little weight on there. So whatever works.
But you don't want to walk away from the
Pretty balanced up.
camera if it's not locked down. If there's not a person standing next to the camera, then you should lock that head so it doesn't move at all.
Wherever it is.
Never
If you're
walk away
operating,
from a
you can-
camera.
And it's generally first assistant's, job to make sure camera's safe at all times, to
Right.
keep an eye on it, to keep a hand on it. If you're moving it, a lot of times, the assistant will grab it and move it and then someone else will grab the sticks.
It'll also work in combination with the grip. Might be a dolly grip or other grips that will be running the dolly, or they'll move the legs, or any other hardware that has to do with fastening the camera to whatever, or fastening to the camera, or the camera to something. So
If you were gonna move it on the tripod, how would you go about moving it? What's the best
this will
safest
probably
way?
get detached
Okay.
in this
Yeah.
case, because it's very heavy.
Right.
So you wouldn't try to grab this whole thing, not in this case. But a lot of people may, camera assistant may take this whole thing as a camera itself and remove it from this
Just
plate
move the plate, yeah.
and grab over here
Okay.
and grab the handle. And then take the whole thing, and then somebody else, a second or a grip might take this whole system, or take this head and put it on the dolly. Now that it's all built, you can
Right.
move it around, put it wherever you need.
So that's the advantage of having it on the quick release plate. So if we, if we take it entirely off here, oops, thank you. We have the plate down here, so I can take this and move it wherever I want, and then put it back onto here. And then as long as it's
Front end.
locked in, and then pull it locked all the way down. But now we're also still perfectly balanced. We didn't need to slide anything off,
Right.
upsetting our balance.
So you didn't move the sliding position.
Right.
That's key.
So that's a big advantage of that, especially when you have a big, built-up camera or a heavy system that you spent a decent amount of time building anyway. Yeah. Yeah. So our monitor, just have a,
Show them how to plug that.
9-inch monitor. This little control panel on the side gets plugged into the control port. And then we can run either, well,
I don't think you have
we're gonna have to run,
Surprised we don't have more bats for that. You could, sometimes these are mounted on the camera. I know it's sort of large, but people do it. And there's, the cables are there.
it is, it's in here.
So way to power it from the back here. It's a P-tap, which is the Anton Bauer plate, gold plate connector, so you could power it. But since it's way over there, we want to do that. So you put a battery.
Instead, another Anton Bauer battery. It's gonna fit around here, around this guy.
So camera crew will be responsible for getting all these batteries charged the night before and keeping set charged on
Should
set?
actually have more dynamics like that.
Yeah.
Don't have any of those bats in this facility.
Either one?
Is the battery between the one, like, are they two different batteries, or is it the same prong?
The same ones will work.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just the, the capacity of them is different. Obviously, the larger ones are higher capacity.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Keep something charging, you should be fine. But like one of these larger batteries on here, that thing would run for hours. So here's your BNC cable. We'll hook it up.
So we're going into the SDI input. Not the video. So this video is referring to a composite video signal, an analog signal rather than the SDI signal. So we're going there. The BNC is a twist lock connection.
Now, is that different from a YC cable?
A YC cable.
Maybe like a three multi-cable, like something
Yeah.
like that. It's all one, I mean, it's,
It can be. So you can have.
but this can go to the NTSC video input as well. So the type coming out of here is HD SDI.
Okay.
So serial digital interface is what it's saying here.
But the cable itself can transmit both, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So with this camera, there's multiple outputs. With, again, this camera is very modular. This back piece is a modular piece called the Pro I/O input-output. This can come off, and then this part here is called the brain. The brain by itself, if you look underneath, has one BNC output right here. And it has some little micro connectors, and it has a HDMI connector, which I think we can try to see if we can get to that monitor there if you like. I can either use that output. It's a little hard to get to without a 90-degree
Adapter.
BNC connector, but also on here is there's 2 more outputs on this Pro I/O module, which is pretty helpful. So I'm just gonna open one of those. Preview and program, PGM and preview. Are your 2 options on there. And then there's 1 red button right here with the light, and that's power. So who wants to start it up?
Mike.
Yeah, I could catch the red camera, yeah.
Push. That's it. Nope, out there with the light, see the light? Nope. Red light. Hold too long, just give it 1 push. You can hear the fans knocking up. It's got some loud fans.
Does it get really hot?
It does, and that's why the fans are really intense. But when you record, they'll go off. So it takes a minute to start up.
This is on. Nope, didn't turn on.
Right into it. There we go, look at that. Is this TV
Oh,
plugged
yeah.
in? We can
I
take a
think
look,
it
see
is.
if it's easy to get us the
So you can adjust this monitor and calibrate it. You can send bars from the camera. And then using your blue only and your brightness, contrast, chroma, and phase, you can adjust so that you are color accurate on this. And it's pretty good at holding its color accuracy. You'll probably have to do it once or twice, or just check it once or twice a day if you are planning on keeping this totally accurate.
Yes.
But for now, we'll just up the brightness a bit more,
Yeah, H in there too.
up the brightness, up the contrast a little bit more, just so we can see a little better. Since we're using this for framing and not necessarily for color check.
The ravages of old age, I can't see what the heck. In there. Gonna take a second.
There it is, hey, it works.
Ah, that's a different look, huh?
The quality's right. It looks like a 4K.
That's 100 millimeters, that's 18 on this. So this is touchscreen. You can see I touch it and you see the menus come on and off, right?
So who remembers from last semester some of the things that you have to set your camera for?
I'll slide this
ISO.
like back to you a little
So we have to set ISO, we have to make a decision on what our ISO is going to be. Only we had some experienced people.
Take photos, tweet it out, let people know.
Yep.
Understood. Yeah, we should probably switch on that before we go.
Switch out.
The, make it a
Oh, is
two-step.
that what's happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we might as well. Let me see
Does
what
it
mode
sound
this is in right
enthusiastic?
now. It's in 5K.
No,
Is the menu on there?
yeah, only 5.
I think it goes up to 6.
It does it, okay. You're saying you doesn't recommend 2K, 2K, it's kind of, yeah, the sensor just.
Do you guys have any questions while we're,
Sort of don't use
while we're
the
at it?
sensor, so it kind of doesn't make sense.
All the tools that you guys have been mentioning, is that included in the set, or do we need?
I'm sorry?
All the tools that you guys have been mentioning, are those included in this, in the package?
What,
or do we
what
need
tools?
This is screwdriver.
Oh,
No, that was.
No.
this screwdriver is actually yours.
Yeah,
That was
we're
the-
gonna
that was
have
the one thing I
to, we're gonna have to
forgot
put together a
on
toolkit. I have a toolkit at
Um,
home I can bring on
I
set.
have a couple,
But-
too, I just don't know what.
I mean, yeah, like a typical AC will have a belt with a number of different tools. And you won't need them for every situation. You know, if you guys know exactly what you're doing, you could probably tailor the tools that you will want to have to that. But, I mean, in general, you'll definitely need screwdrivers, you'll definitely want a wrench. You know, some basic things, you know, cloth and cleaning fluid for the lens and for the filters. The filters are over here. So they're 6.66 by 6.66 inches, just as standard ND ND set of them, 36 and 9. The
And they slide into the map box, right?
Yeah,
You already put
so
one in?
on the map box, you have, so you'll have 2 per, I guess these are stage sets. So this is a 4-stage map box right now. It has 4 different filter trays, so you can put 4 filters in at the same time. This is a 2-stage back for it, which I'm going to, or maybe we will switch for you depending on what resolution you're going to be at. But on all of them, they have 2 locks for the filter trays. So that's going to be these gray knobs. Turning left will unlock, right will lock. The stage closest to the lens is geared, so it has a little knob on the bottom, and if you turn that knob, the gear will move up or down. So you can see it. That way, if you're using a like a grad
Graduator.
filter, you can slightly adjust where the grad comes into view without having to unlock and then hold the tray there and lock it.